What are we discussing on today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast? We got our final crossover with Locked On Giants host Ben Kapsick to break down Robbie Ray becoming an All-Star once again. What would happen if these two teams switch bullpens, and should we be surprised with the San Francisco Giants' success in 2025?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. And today it is crossover time with one of our dear friends and greatest guests we've had on the podcast, Ben Kapsick of Locked On Giants, to break down the Giants' first half. Robbie Ray still becoming once again elite, the rejuvenation of Robbie Ray. And what if these two teams switch bullpens? Ben Kapsick, Locked On Giants. How you doing today, sir?
Well, I was doing great, Millard, until I learned that you will no longer be my favorite podcast crossover partner moving forward.
Wow. Shots to the rest of the Locked On network.
Shots fired.
Shots. Wow. So grateful to know I'm the favorite. That makes me feel so good. Makes my heart feel so warm and welcome. And we're going to do one more banger episode for everyone, breaking down so much. Please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account to still see what I'm doing post Locked On D-backs. And don't forget to still follow the show, support the account. We got the new host starting next week, Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. Stream Locked On Diamondbacks wherever you get your podcasts, Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. And same for Locked On Giants. They're also wherever you get podcasts on YouTube. And Ben, where can they find you on social media?
At Ben Kapsick on Twitter /X. I hate to call it X. And the show account is at LO_SF Giants because those pesky New York Giants took away the Locked On Giants tag. So
that's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
The San Francisco Giants, I think, are better than the New York Giants.
Yeah, we were here first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You guys, yeah. How long have the Giants been around? 100 plus years?
Oh, yeah. Like 140 years. Come on, man.
Okay, 140 years of history for the San Francisco Giants. And now they're sending some all-stars to the game, and they're having a pretty good first half. We'll break that all down in segment number 1. All right, Ben Kapsick of Locked On Giants here. And starting off the show, we got the All-Star break, of course, going on. We had the home run derby last night. Surprise, surprise, the guy who leads the league in home runs won the home run derby with 54 in Cal Raleigh. Pretty fun event. I know a lot of people, it's pretty polarizing. It feels like just all-star game and festivities in general from sport to sport because no one really cares. But yeah, at the same time, all we want to do is complain. So it's like a weird place in sports that we're in right now. But something you can't complain about right now probably is the San Francisco Giants. Yes, they might be a little bit of a flawed team, but if you told any Giants fan entering the season at this point, you'd be right there in the mix for a wild card race. For a wild card spot in the wild card race, fighting with the Padres and the other good teams of the National League. How are you evaluating so far the first half of the season for the Giants, and how do you feel about your team for the second half of the year?
I think it's good perspective to even just hear you say that because, you know, in the daily grind, like head down, going through it, it's actually been a little bit frustrating because they started out great. Like I think they were 8-1. I know they were 12-4. And if you look at their record now, they're still roughly, you know, they are 7 games over 500, which they were 9 games into the season. So after 9 games, it's been 500 baseball the rest of the way. And so that's a lot of baseball. They've played 97 now. So that's 88 games of 500. They're 44-44, I suppose, since an 8-1 start. So at the same time, I agree with you. And I said the same thing on Monday, that if you had told me going into the season that at the All-Star break, the Giants would be 52-45 and half a game out of a playoff spot, would I take that? And I would say, yes, I would take that. Versus like kind of rolling the dice and possibly being worse than that. So ultimately, they've struggled on offense, even after acquiring Rafael Devers, who's also struggled on offense. And so that's been kind of hard to watch. But their pitching has been very good. They have 3 all-star pitchers. And Robbie Ray, former D-backs legend, is one of them. And I don't know how I feel about how the second half is going to go, but I know that they're very much in the mix, and a lot of teams have fallen out. And so the D-backs struggling, the Braves struggling, like that has helped the Giants' chances. And, 40% of the season left. I don't know how it's going to go, but the Giants are in it, and I'm glad.
Yeah, it seems like it always revolves around the offense when it comes to San Francisco Giants. And looking at the beginning of the year, like one of your key players was a Jung-Ho Lee, who I picked up early in my fantasy season, who was carrying me for those first few weeks. But sadly, Ben, this past week, I dropped Jung-Ho Lee because I was looking at the stats over the last month, and it's like I have Cedeno Rafaela of the Boston Red Sox. I have Kyle Stowers of the Marlins. So unfortunately, I have to drop a Jung-Ho Lee. I also drafted Willie Adames. He has not had the kind of season that you would have expected. And so when you're looking at this Giants lineup, like, do you expect more regression from the Jung-Ho Lee's types, or do you think it bounce back to what he did early in the season, like Willie Adames? Is it just a slow first half and he's going to get going in the second half? Like, how much do you believe in a bounce back from this Giants offense with guys like Devers, who was playing really well in Boston, but since coming over is starting to struggle? Like, can you see him pick it back up again in the second half of the season as well?
Yeah, I mean, that is the major question for me. And when you look at it and you look at all the guys you just named, I can't reasonably expect all of them to struggle as much as they have at various points. Like you said, Jung-Ho Lee was setting the world ablaze in the first 3 weeks of the season, and it's just been a struggle ever since. So if he can just rebound a little bit, that's a big help. And then Devers, one of the most feared hitters in the game, has been kind of a non-factor with the Giants. And so can you really bank on one of the most feared hitters in the game just continuing to be a non-factor? Probably not. And then Willie Adames, he's been a slow starter in his career. And so that's one guy where I can kind of tangibly say he had his first off day on the 6th of June, first game that he didn't play in. Or actually, excuse me, on the 8th of June. And then since then, he's been on fire. So we're talking about a month where he's actually really looked like he's finally living up to that contract. And so those guys, Matt Chapman also missed a month. They were really finding their groove as a team and offensively before acquiring Devers even. And right at that time, Matt Chapman went down spraining 3 of his fingers on a dive back into first on a pickoff attempt. And so he's a big key because when he's healthy, he's quietly very good and arguably their best player all around. And he's come back, but he hasn't quite gotten into that groove yet. He's a little bit streaky himself. So they're going to need health, and they're going to need someone like Devers to be Devers, I think.
Yeah, when's the next homegrown position player going to make the All-Star team for the San Francisco Giants? Last year, you technically had one in Elliot Ramos, but I don't know if anyone looks at him as a core building piece. He's definitely a nice guy to have on the roster, glue guy, but he's not someone that you're putting on the face of your posters. He's not the guy that's the face of your game day tickets and stuff like that. So who's the next position player for the Giants that you can even see make an all-star team that you can say, you know what, we drafted that guy, we developed that guy because a Marco Luciano, at one point we thought could be that. A Patrick Bailey, who's turned into one of the better defensive catchers, was kind of a disappointment a few years ago with the Giants, or I guess a Joey Bartu. Who is that position player in the Giant system who we could see as maybe the next homegrown all-star?
I think it's got to be Bryce Eldridge, who was their first round draft pick in 2023, 16th overall, freak physicality. He's 6'7", and he's 20 years old. He's 20 years old, and he's been, he was 6'7" when he was drafted. Yeah, he's very, very tall. And left-handed hitter, first baseman. So, he's got to hit because it's not like you're talking about a shortstop or something. It's a offensive position, but he is in AAA at age 20. He was dominating in AA this year, and then was promoted to AAA. And in 16 games, he was struggling, and then he blew out his hamstring a little bit. But he just today or yesterday, actually on Monday, started playing again. And so I expect him, like he has consistently done, to like rebound at the level he's at. And he's very young for being in AAA at 20 years old. And the kid has enormous power, and he's a left-handed hitter. We'll see how assuming he makes the major league roster at some point, we'll see, can he tackle Oracle Park, which is just very hard on left-handed hitters. But he's got that kind of freakish power. If you look at scouting reports, like I'm looking on Fangraphs, they drop a 70 on his future game power on the 20 to 80 scouting scale, and an 80 on his raw power. So he would be definitely the guy that I would bank on. And hopefully it happens, because that is really what they need, is something like that.
Imagine being consensus top 15 prospect, already 20 years old in AAA. And you just look at the Giants roster. It's not like there's anyone on the major league level now that you're like, we have to play him over this prospect, right? It's not like I have to play Mike Yastrzemski over the future of the San Francisco Giants. I don't think you're in that position. So there's no one clogging the path to a Bryce Eldridge. So I would be very curious to see what he can do in a Giants uniform. Maybe at the end of the season, maybe next year, we'll see what happens with him. But I want to transition the conversation a little bit and talk about the Giants All-Stars, specifically former Arizona Diamondbacks pitcher Robbie Ray. We'll discuss that in segment number 2. But first, I want to talk to you guys about Supply House, because get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, crossing over with Locked On Giants host Ben Kapsick, and I want to talk a little bit about All-Stars, because I believe both of our teams are sending 3 All-Stars to the game, but in different ways, because the D-backs are sending 3 position players, Eugenio Suarez, Corbin Carroll, and Ketel Marte. Meanwhile, we're seeing 3 pitchers for the San Francisco Giants. Of course, Logan Webb, who is just building himself a resume. I mean, he's like top 5 in Cy Young voting every single season, an all-star every single year now. He is building himself a little resume of accolades over there. Also got yourself a reliever, Randy Rodriguez, with a sub-1 ERA. I want to talk about the Giants bullpen a little bit later. But the real star of this, because I had a preseason prediction in our, NL West roundtable where I said, you know what? Loaded division of pitchers from the D-backs to the Dodgers to the Padres, but the guy that I think could be the sneaky dark horse is a man who already won a Cy Young Award before, Robbie Ray. He's doing it once again, making the All-Star team with the Giants. Comeback season in a major way, 2.65 ERA, 1.084 whip, 9.7 strikeouts per 9, just having a fantastic season. What have you seen from Robbie Ray after coming back last season off of injury? You didn't see a large sample size, of course, but he comes into this year and he looks like he's all the way back to his pre-injury former Cy Young Award form. Like, what has made Robbie Ray so good this year, and what are the realistic chances that you think he can take home that Cy Young Award? And as you speak, I'm actually going to look up the FanDuel odds right now.
Okay. Yeah. So they wouldn't be where they're at without the performance that he's put in, because like we've discussed, their offense has largely struggled this season. And Logan Webb is great. The bullpen has performed really well. Randy Rodriguez is a big part of that. But having that second starter, because as we discussed going into the year, it wasn't Justin Verlander. Like, to expect that out of Verlander, we had that discussion, was not a good idea. And sure enough, he has been more like their number 5 starter, if that. But Robbie Ray, acquired, by the way, for Mitch Haniger and Anthony DeSclafani, who's now on the D-backs, coincidentally enough. Disgusting. Yeah, exactly. And Mitch Haniger got released, but is still getting paid by the Mariners this year. So a little bit of a heist of a trade there. But what have I seen? First of all, command that's been acceptable, because I know at times Robbie Ray's command issues have been his undoing when he was with Arizona. This year, his walk rate is 9.2%. At times with Arizona, like in 2018, for example, it was over 13%. So the walks have been under control. The home runs, that's another thing, have been under control. It's a better ballpark, obviously. For Oracle Park is one of the least hitter or homer friendly parks in all baseball, as we all know. But also, he added a pitch, Millard. He's got a new changeup that he learned from, guess who?
Who?
American League All-Star starting pitcher Tarek Skubal, who taught him his changeup grip in the offseason. And while it's not like it's been a devastating pitch for Robbie Ray, he used to be just kind of fastball slider. And now he's fastball 51% of the time, slider 23%. I guess he also had a curve, but the curve is similar to the slider in its movement. It's coming in on righties, and then the fastball he throws up in the zone. But that changeup kind of fading away just adds a different dynamic, and they can't just sit like either fastball or some kind of breaking ball coming in on them as a righty or away from them as a lefty. So he felt it was important to add a changeup type of pitch, and that's exactly what he did, and he learned it from the best. Tarek Skubal has a very nasty changeup, and so it's just, I think, made it harder to have a good at bat against Robbie Ray. And I've seen him just land the changeup like early in counts, like 0-0, like just flop in a changeup for a strike, flop in a curveball for a strike, and then like attack mostly with fastballs. But he's just become a more complete pitcher, and then you add that with just keeping the ball in the ballpark, which has been at times what's been his biggest issue, and then also not walking so many guys. Like, I think his command has been pretty solid, and that's made all the difference, and he's just been very consistent. It's not just like he was really hot for a while and he's had his struggles. He's just kind of been consistently good all season long, and that's been huge for them to go along with Logan Webb. But I think Webb is just far and away, if you're talking about Cy Young odds, more likely to win it. But at the same time, because I'm looking at like kind of under the hood numbers and fielding independent pitching, that kind of stuff, which does get factored into, I think, voting. But at the same time, like these two, if the Giants got into the playoffs and you had to face Logan Webb and Robbie Ray, the Giants would have a chance to win that series. Like, so all the more reason to make a move, like going out and acquiring a Rafael Devers and potentially more. And it's Buster Posey's first season doing this, and so we kind of don't know what to expect. But the Devers trade certainly shocked the industry. I know that wasn't your question, but I think that having Webb and Ray like gives them a shot no matter who they're playing in a postseason series, and the bullpen that they have.
No, for sure, because you saw the D-backs in 2023. You have two elite guys at the front line of your rotation. You can see how far your staff can go if you can have that just one more third guy that could be serviceable, like a Brandon Pfaadt. Right now, Cy Young Award odds have Logan Webb fourth, I guess lowest odds at plus 3,500, and they have Robbie Ray tied for fifth. So they definitely agree with you. Logan Webb would be the guy to win the Cy Young Award if you had to choose. But can you win with just two guys in your rotation? Like, who is that third guy that you're looking at? I know we talked about Hayden Birdsong in the preseason as a guy to watch out for the San Francisco Giants, who's kind of young. Landon Rope, I mean, he has the best numbers, but I'm gonna be honest here, Ben. I don't know much about Landon Rope. And of course, Justin Verlander, he's old. I don't think you expect him to be that third guy. So let's say you got your Merrill Kelly, your Zach Allen, and Logan Webb and Robbie Ray. Who's going to be that Brandon Pfaadt for you, that number 3 starter that could just go out there and give you a clean 5 innings and keep you in those ball games in the postseason?
I mean, right now it would be Landon Roop, because if you just look at the numbers, they're far and away the best among the remaining starters. When you're talking about him and Birdsong and Verlander, Roop just went out and had a great game against the Dodgers to close out the first half of the season. 6 innings, 2 runs, 1 earned, 8 strikeouts, 7 hits, 1 walk. So 3.27 ERA from this relatively unknown and anonymous player who wasn't really considered a top prospect. And here he is with a low 3s ERA in the first half, making 19 starts. He's made every turn through the rotation all first half in his first year as a starter. He made 4 starts last year in 23 games, and they all 4 came at the end of the season. I want to say maybe he dominated the Diamondbacks late in the year in 2024. I don't remember, but yeah, we'll have to fact check. It may have been Kyle Harrison who I'm thinking about, or maybe even years ago, somebody else. Anyway, regardless, right now it'd be Roop, but I don't know that they want to push him super hard and surpass all previous innings totals and then rely on him deep into October if it comes to that. So when you talk about the trade deadline, I wouldn't be shocked, especially given the recent poor performance by Birdsong and then the overall poor performance on the season by Justin Verlander. Even though his last start, Verlander actually did look pretty good. I wouldn't be shocked if they went out and acquired some kind of veteran to be that middle of the rotation starter, so you're not putting so much pressure on these young guys who are kind of yet to really build themselves up to a major league workload and also experience a major league postseason for the first time potentially.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about the Giants bullpen, because that has been another star of that team that has really carried that franchise in 2025. Of course, adding another all-star in, let me get his name right, unless you got it off the top of your head. Randy Rodriguez?
Yeah, Randy Rodriguez.
Randy Rodriguez. I was like, let me pull up the baseball reference and make sure I get it right. So I want to talk about your bullpen, and what if our team switch bullpens? What would our teams look like? We'll discuss that in segment number 3. Hey, but first, I want to talk to you guys about Monarch Money, because ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. What is one surprising thing you noticed when you started tracking your spending with Monarch? Well, for me, I've noticed that I'm saving a lot more when it comes to food delivery. I'm not doing any more just late night door dashing. I'm saving both money and I'm saving calories. So I'm getting shredded this summer, also thanks to Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks, the Locked On Giants crossover with Ben Kapsick. And Ben, we've seen the Giants already make a big move this season with the Rafael Devers trade. And when looking at the Arizona Diamondbacks, their big issue this year has been their bullpen. It has been an absolute disaster, blowing down, just melting down game after game, blowing a whole bunch of leads for the D-backs. And I would like to believe if the D-backs maybe address in the offseason or at least in the regular season, they wouldn't be where they are right now. My question is, why do we see this philosophy in Major League Baseball where teams just feel like they can't actually make any moves until the trade deadline, post MLB draft? You just see this stalemate across the league where it's like we all have to wait till the final couple days right before the deadline before anyone makes a trade. The D-backs have had a terrible bullpen for weeks, and if they've had a league average bullpen, they would be right where the Giants are, fighting for a wild card spot. Maybe they would even own a wild card spot because of how many games they've blown via the bullpen this year. I just want to ask you, why do we see this across Major League Baseball where it feels like them compared to other sports where every team likes to just sit on their hands and wait until the final day before addressing any of their team needs?
Teams are just really stingy and protective, and it's very annoying as a fan. And it was so refreshing as a fan, especially as a Giants fan, to see them make a huge trade way before the trade deadline. And so it has to do, of course, with the time winding down, the incentive structure of you have no more time to do this. I forget, I'm like blanking on the exact word that this is, but it puts pressure on both sides to finally get something done. But, you mentioned fantasy baseball earlier. Fantasy owners aren't afraid to make a move in June. And I think these MLB teams are just a little bit too stingy, because you ultimately, like you said, it can make the Giants wanted to address their offense right then and there. And so they did it. And they are probably willing to pay more because they're getting the player for longer. And I think most teams aren't willing to do that because they're like, no, we don't want to have to pay a little bit more in terms of prospects in order to get that extra month and a half. We want to try to get the best deal we can. And we can only do that if the other team is also under pressure. Like, I've got to trade these players because time is running out. And so I'm willing to accept a lesser deal potentially. But that ultimately, I don't think is very wise because, like you said, it can tank a whole season for you. If you've got a glaring need, go out and address it. I think we saw when the Braves won the World Series in 2021, they went out and acquired a bunch of players. I think it was in early July, and they were struggling and they did it anyway. Actually, did they sell and then buy? I forget. But the point is, we need to see this more because teams have needs that are evident earlier than July 31st. And every game matters. We saw last year the D-backs lost a playoff spot on a tiebreaker. And so one more game that maybe if you make a move in June, you get an extra month and a half of a player, it could make a difference. And so it's kind of crazy. And hopefully the Giants doing what they did maybe changes things.
And maybe you pay more of a premium if you have to pull the trigger early. But if it's the difference between you making the postseason and you blowing up your roster and taking yourself out of title contention, it's like, yeah, give up the 18th best prospect in your organization. A guy like David Robertson says he's not coming back to baseball unless he gets like $15 million on a one-year deal. Guess what? David Robertson was a stud last year. This D-backs bullpen is terrible. And instead of going after the Anthony Del Scafanis and picking up the Taylor Scotts and all these Jake Woodfords, all these random waiver wire guys, just spend the $15 million and go add a bona fide stud in the back end of your bullpen and David Robertson. So that kind of stuff for Major League Baseball just frustrates me so much. But I do want to ask you, Ben, because we actually haven't talked since the Rafael Devers deal. Are you any bit concerned, a little worried with the contract. Devers, I mean, a lot of reports of him just in the locker room causing some issues. It seems like the chemistry was kind of falling apart between him and his teammates and the ownership group over the last few months. Obviously, a lot of it could also be put on the ownership group for how they handled the Devers situation. So I think there's blame on both sides. But either way, Devers is not like the most technically sound guy defensively. He's going to be mostly a DH for a majority of that contract, or at least for the second half of that contract. So how do you feel about bringing in a guy like Devers, who is clearly talented offensively? I think one of the best position players in Major League Baseball from an offensive standpoint, but also obviously flawed, making around 30 plus million a year until 2033. Are you at all concerned, especially when you look around the NL West and see teams like the San Diego Padres with some long-term deals like the Xander Bogaerts, another former Boston Red Sox, obviously a little bit older than Devers, but are you at least concerned at all when it comes to a contract of that nature, that length, and that expense?
I would say yes, and that it largely comes down to how he's played so far. Like, if he was out here just lighting the world on fire with offense, I think Giants fans would just be dancing in the streets happy. And I would feel the same way because they have had such a hard time, if not like an impossible time, getting big time offensive performers into the Giants uniform. And they have tried. They tried very hard for Aaron Judge and
Carlos
Shohei
Correa.
Ohtani. They got Correa to agree, and then that whole thing fell apart. And so it's been a disaster from that perspective. And Bryce Harper was another one, and they thought they were getting him, and he ends up going to the Phillies, of course. So if he hits, I think people won't care. It's not my money. Like you said with David Robertson, like if it's not your $15 million, it's the owners who should care. But yeah, he hasn't been moving well, but apparently he's dealing with a back injury right now. And so that actually, that's another concern. We haven't seen elite offensive Rafi Devers yet. And so that is what sparks the concern. But if this All-Star break kind of gives him a chance to let his back calm down, and maybe I talked to Gabby from Locked On Red Sox, and she said, yeah, he can be a little bit streaky, but once he's on, he can't be stopped. And so I can't wait to watch him not be able to be stopped. And one thing, too, I want to just add, first of all, I've talked on and on on my show about the situation that went down in Boston. And like, he came in here from day one and was like, I'll play anywhere. And so there's been none of this clubhouse issue kind of thing. I think it had a lot to do, if not everything to do, with the communication with the front office and ownership is why that whole thing broke down in Boston. And then also his contract contains deferrals. And so it's a little bit less expensive than it looks. And then also the Giants included Jordan Hicks, who had like an ERA of almost 7, who has 2 more years on his deal in this trade to offset some of the money. And that was, I believe, like $22 million for the next 2 years, plus what was left on his deal this year. So there's money kind of being offset, and there's deferrals in Devers' contract. So it's more like entering next year, like $220 million, which comes out to less than $30 million a year. So that matters, I think. But they also gave up some young talent. But he just needs to hit, and then people will be happy, ultimately.
So not coming out the break, but entering the trade deadline, do you expect, and this will be our final question as we wrap up today, do you expect the Giants to go all in at this year's deadline? Talking with Javi yesterday about the Padres, we expect them to look around, but maybe not be like total buyers. Definitely want to add, but maybe not go all in with how expensive that roster is already. So are the Giants going to be that team, the NL West, that spends some money and continues to add? They already did Devers. Are we going to see them make another splash this deadline?
It's hard to know because this is the first trade deadline under Buster Posey, who has, no front office experience really until now. Running the show, but what we have to go by is the Devers trade, and I do think it matters what their position in the standings looks like if they're going to wait until the deadline. That's another thing, is who knows, they could make a deal today. I don't think MLB likes deals to go down on the day of a day like the All-Star game, but we could see a deal, say, on Friday, because right now they're half a game back. But given what they did and went out and got Devers, it seems like the MO for Posey is going to be to go for it. And so they were a little too cautious, or a lot too cautious, I think, under the previous regime. And so I think Posey understands, like, if the team has a shot, you want to take advantage of that and push your chips in. So I think I would expect him to be aggressive, unless they just come out of the gates and lose like 7 in a row, which they've done before, like coming out of an All-Star break, having good odds and all that, and then they just tanked and fell out of contention within a week. So if they just stay afloat and stay right there, I would expect them to be pretty aggressive, yes.
Well, I'm curious to see how the NL West arms race is going to be between the Dodgers, the Giants, the Padres, and maybe those three teams are feeding off the carcass of the Arizona Diamondbacks, picking our pieces. I mean, you could add, if you want 30 bombs and the guy who leads the league in ribbies, come get Eugenio Suarez. If you want a 300 hitter in your first baseman with over 800 OPS, come get Josh Naylor.
We would love Josh Naylor over
come
here.
Get him. We're trading everyone.
Okay,
it's going to
let's
be
do
a
it.
fire sale out here in Arizona. So come.
Can we do it this week?
Maybe this week. We'll see. D-backs, I think, are going to hold on for 2 more weeks until the deadline. We're going to see if we could go 10-2 out of the break, then we could salvage the season. But that might be the only way. I have absolute no faith, no hope in this D-backs team. I think we're going to be major sellers at this year's deadline. So I'll be riding one of these NL West bandwagons for the rest of the season. We'll see which one posts. Okay, maybe the Giants. We'll see post-trade deadline. It's our final crossover. Locked on Diamondbacks, Locked on Giants. Where can the listeners find you online, Ben?
Oh, the usual places. Locked on Giants on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts as well. And then, like I said, on Twitter, at Ben Kapsick, Kaspick. I'm pretty active on there. And the show account is a little dormant, I'm not going to lie, at LO_SF Giants. And what about you?
Yes, at Career Thomas 24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks on both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. Locked on Diamondbacks, Locked on Giants, wherever you stream podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. Final crossover, final week. Until next time, whenever that is, Ben Kapsick, Locked on Giants.